I'd like to invite to the stage my good friend, and again, I'm too modest to even refer to you, Phil, as a colleague. You've been described by many as the inventor of modern marketing, the science of marketing, and also have touched many people in the world. In fact, I dare say that we wouldn't be here in the way we are now here at Kellogg if it hadn't been for your support early on. This is a great institution. It's a great place. It's been a fertile ground for all of us to build kin together. But it is different. It's a different concept for a university. And early on, as any time you're trying to do something new within an established enterprise, it's tough. And one of the things you need to find desperately are sponsors and people who care, who are interested, who have respect of the institution. And Phil, you hit your hand against the desk a couple times on behalf of the kin, and I wanted to thank you for that. So if you could come down front. So
this institution wouldn't be the same without you either.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Phil. So we're here, though, to talk about, after the Mutual Admiration Society thing, thank you. We're here to get your context and perspective.
Yeah.
We've been talking about growth for good. In addition to the perhaps 200 books over the years that you've published.
No.
No?
57.
Only 57?
Yeah.
Ah, well, all right.
So, one joker said it's the same book written 57 different ways. There's a point there.
Wow. Take my wife, please. I mean, what is this we're doing here? Anyway, Confronting Capitalism. This is Phil's new book, and I suggest a very new book. And it's about the power of the capitalist system. There's no doubt anyone with half a brain notes the power of this system, but we also have some issues. Phil, what's ailing capitalism?
Okay, let me start by, we had a remark made years ago about democracy being a terrible system, but it's the best of all the systems.
Winston Churchill.
Winston Churchill said that, and we say that about capitalism too, that capitalism is the best system, but it has some problems. Right. And the main thing is that the capitalist system is a great supply system. I mean, there's no other system that can produce so many goods and services for the economy. Now, you don't want those goods and services to sit on the shelves, right? You can go to shopping centers and you'll see all kinds of jeans waiting to be bought. You can go to auto dealerships and see cars waiting to be bought. And so we need to complement the supply brilliance of capitalism with the demand brilliance.
What does demand brilliance mean?
Well, the other word for it is marketing.
Okay. So really, this is the same book with just a different title.
Yeah, that's 58. In other words, people have to have enough money to buy the things that this glorious system of capitalism can create, and we've got a real problem there. And people don't have enough money. That's why we're having a issue about minimum wages and other things. And so, but they get along. They manage to buy things by going into debt. So capitalism depends on the credit card.
Wow.
Boy, if we lose the credit card or the ability to have confidence in people who borrow money, then capitalism sinks in its effectiveness. So why did I write this book? I am trained as a economist. So who trained me? So I studied under Milton Friedman at the University of Chicago, got a master's degree, and I became a convinced private market, free market cowboy. Mm-hmm. No doubt about it. Then for my PhD, I went to MIT, and I meet Paul Samuelson, mm-hmm. and I meet Robert Solow. So I've had 3 Nobel Prize winners and so on. And I became a Keynesian. And I have remained a Keynesian. I am not a free market guy anymore in that old cowboy sense. Mm-hmm. And so I am an economist, and this is the first book where I have come out of the closet as an economist. I'm no longer ashamed of being an economist.
So what we say here is, hi, my name is Phil, I'm an economist.
Right. And the main thing is that the economists have no respect for what is called marketing, which is an economic science. It's kind of, our marketing is sort of dirty stuff. What do we want to, there's no equations we can create around that. They're wrong, by the way. If you pick up the Journal of Marketing Science, it's unreadable, which means that our field has really made it. It's unreadable. It's just equation after equation. So we're slowly gaining respect. So what did now, some of you know about Thomas Piketty, because you
Yes.
bought the book. He sold 200,000 copies the first day, and no one read it unless you read the first chapter. But Piketty really, his book called Capital in the 21st Century was described by Paul Krugman as the best economics book in the last 10 years. And it is. And the book established the following propositions. First, when R is greater than G, income gap will grow worse and worse and worse. What's R? The return on capital, when it exceeds the rate of growth of the GDP, capital will be earning more than labor, and the gap will get worse. So I'm quite concerned about that, and that's only dealt with that problem of the income gap in the second chapter. So this is a book way beyond Piketty, because I found 13 other shortcomings, and the solutions to each shortcoming.
Great.
14 chapters.
Give us a couple examples of, here's a shortcoming, here's a potential solution.
All right, poverty. Capitalism has no particular interest in poor people. That makes sense because people with capital want to invest and get a return. Poor people don't have money, so you don't solve the problem. Even if you're a rich society, which we have been, we haven't reduced the poverty rate, which is at 15% in the United States. And so my first chapter deals with the work that's been done by developmental economists around the world and what they have offered as solutions to helping lift the poor people. And by the way, every poor person is a future consumer. Mm-hmm. And I think it was C.K. Prahalad, that maybe the name's familiar, who wrote The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid, and he said there's a fortune in that market, that much of it is black market stuff and so on.
Right.
And
in many places, 80, 90% in that space is black market.
Absolutely, and so we don't know how big it is, but it's big. But the main thing is, so in chapter 1, I talk about the problem of poverty and what capitalism can do about it. The second chapter is about the income gap. The third is about workers used to be treated very poorly in most societies, whether it was capitalistic or something else. I mean, we had sweatshops.
Right, right.
So we had labor unions that corrected the problem.
Right.
We don't have labor unions anymore, so to speak.
Yeah.
So employees are paid $7.45, which is not a living wage. Mm-hmm. So we need to do something about that. The fourth chapter is about automation. We're going to have a job problem that will be so deep.
We talked about that on Wednesday.
Absolutely. I speculate on how far automation will go and how many jobs it will destroy. The argument is that we are going to, the new industries will provide a lot of jobs, but nothing up to the level of the jobs that are being destroyed, the 250,000 taxi drivers and so on and so forth. So we may even have to spin new lifestyles for people who don't get fully employed. As a matter of fact, I like to watch the ratio of the number of people who are employed to the total population. And what's happening is we're in an aging society, so there's fewer people supporting more people who are not creating any commercial value. So that's a problem. I also deal with the fact that every business hurts every business in some way has a footprint, a carbon footprint. Yeah. You have a carbon footprint, I have a carbon footprint, but the cost of the carbon footprint is externalized. They don't cover their own cost. Right. Those are called the negative externalities. So what we want to do is make sure that we get companies to respect the triple bottom line, which is the 3 Ps, not the 4 Ps of marketing. People, profits, and planet. Okay, and then I deal with the fact that the economy in another chapter is becoming overly financially driven. It's a financial economy. It's not a manufacturing economy. It's making money from money, and that's all right, but if there's a Kotler plan, which I'm trying to evolve about fixing things, one of the things is I'd put a tax on financial transactions. And I would like the money coming from the
Is this
financial...
similar to what Piketty suggested?
Piketty, I don't know if
he
he suggested that in his book,
Well,
but it has been suggested by someone else.
Some sort of global financial tax, which seems impractical.
That's a wealth tax. He gets into not
I
only
see.
the income gap, but the wealth gap.
Okay, I thought he included a financial transaction tax. in
Well,
one of
here's
his-
what I would say, but make sure that the financial tax, the money doesn't go into defense or other things. It goes into reducing student debt, college
interesting.
debt. $30,000 is the average debt of a college student. It all adds up to $1.2 billion.
more than
Sorry, it's trillion, 1.2 trillion.
Yeah.
And the fact is that these guys can't buy furniture. They can't get married, and so on. And what the irony is, if that student who got his education at Kellogg would have gone to Germany, it would have been a free college education. Or Sweden.
But yet we have a balance to find, because United States, while our tertiary education is so expensive, it's also recognized in general as the highest quality in the world. So the UK is starting to go in our direction right now. But you make a good point. I can't imagine how I would manage coming out of a top institution with that much in student loans. I had loans myself when I came out. It's worse today. But let's project forward 10 years, and we didn't prep any of this, by the way. This
It sounds that way, too.
That's right. Well, with that, Phil Kotler, everyone. No. So project forward 10 or 20 years, education, tertiary education, universities. What's different? What do you think's coming in the future in terms of education with respect to confronting what ails capitalism?
Well, all right. You know, we measure things by the GDP, and we need the GDP measure, but it's not enough. The GDP goes up when you make more munitions, when you sell more guns, when people smoke more. You know, good and bad things make up the GDP. But to know how well we're really doing, we need what is called a well-being index. Now, you know that Bhutan, that small little kingdom, has the happiness index.
And actually, Phil, a small group of us are going from the kin. We're going on a kin expedition to Bhutan for the Gross National Happiness Conference in November.
There's a story about the king who invented the index, by the way. He wanted an index of happiness in Bhutan, and it's a good index. It has 4 components. And then he said, I think I don't want to be king anymore. And they said, you have no choice. Because if you quit, you'll make us unhappy.
It's a true story, actually.
True story.
Yeah.
So, but I'd like the well-being index, which is how many of our people are educated well in math, you know, the STEM area, science, and so on.
Well, I would like to add, others have said this, but instead of STEM, which I love, obviously we both love STEM, STEAM, which is add arts. Add arts. And I mean, this is something Steve Jobs said many times. And people miss that other side of the brain.
Well, the humanities are suffering in America, and if we lose the humanities, we're losing a lot. You're absolutely right. But here's the thing. I think a lot of the problem that I discuss in the book does stem from the income gap, though that's only treated in one chapter. What that leads to are 2 things. The income gap, the overpayment of CEOs, and I apologize, don't attack me if I say this, or maybe you're not one of those earning $50 million, and you're not a hedge fund guy going home with $475 million a year. Because of that gap, 2 things are following from it. One is slower economic growth. Why? Because not leaving enough money in the pockets of the working class, not enough goods can be bought without the second problem, which is high indebtedness. So we are stuck with slow economic growth, high indebtedness, as a result of the way the income is being shared. I think the workers aren't getting their fair share of what the income is that this wealthy capitalist society creates.
So, and it's not only that factor. That's just one manifestation and one factor. So,
Yeah.
for instance, in Japan, the wealth, the differential in incomes is less than the U.S., but yes, yet their economy has been flat for a long time. There are obviously many other factors, but
Yeah.
is that one manifestation
Bob,
of it?
Rob, you're going to have a chance to help us because you're going to give a major talk along with a few others. Howard Tullman will be in Japan,
Yeah.
and
We're on the same flight.
yeah, oh,
Yeah.
you should go on separate flights. I want one of you to show up.
I won't ask which one, Phil.
But the main thing is I have been sponsoring for 4 years now the World Marketing Summit, and Japan being a flat society in growth. They had us last year with 20 speakers that we brought to them to speak. We're going to be there with you and others.
And Mohan's coming too.
And Mohan Soni's coming. So we're going to, if Japan, if you want to buy stock, buy it in Sony, maybe, if in fact your talk goes over.
Okay, great. You have too much faith. So,
But let me just summarize
Phil,
one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the remedy for the income and wealth gap? I think we got to stop the gap from going bigger. I would say this. First, let's have a better minimum wage, a higher minimum wage, and that's happening now. Secondly, I'd like to see a tax on financial transactions and the money going to help reducing the loan problems, college loan problem. Third, I would like to see capital gains. You're going to kill me for this. Capital gains charged at the normal income rate. In other words, there's so many families here who are paying 15% on huge incomes because they're paying 20%. It went up from 15 to 20%.
right.
But I'd like to, them, whatever their income, they should be paying the normal rate.
Well, even Phil, even if you argue with that, the fact that carried interest hasn't been adjusted to be taxed at the same rate as income
another loophole.
is insane.
We call those
insane.
We call those income loopholes, and there's some tax things. And then I really think after a while we should face the fact that the top income rate here, income tax rate, is 39.6%. In England, it's 45%, I think. Sweden, it's about 50%. And I know that we have state taxes too, so ours is higher than it might look. But frankly, I think I would go along with Piketty on raising the tax rate. Now, the real question is, and I went into a shouting match on a radio program with my interviewer, because he turned out to be a diehard Republican and a free marketer. And we were shouting at each other. I hope he doesn't...
Was this Fox Radio or what was it?
How did you know? How did you know? And I said, look, we can never talk sensibly because you come from another universe. We're not on the same planet. Okay. Now, the last point I would make is my next book will be called Confronting Democracy. And I'll tell you what that's about. The two systems that we live under are great systems. Capitalism is the economic system. Democracy is the political system.
Yeah.
Democracy is confusing and hurting capitalism because to get elected today, you need a billionaire behind you. Every candidate now has a billionaire behind him. He's beholden to that person. And the fact is, these guys are not going to make any of the changes. They're not going to make a more progressive tax system or anything else.
Even if they might agree it's a good idea.
Yeah, they're
why would
not
they do
free
that?
anymore. So we got to talk about what's happening with lobbyists, gerrymandering, and other things that are polluting our democratic system. The system is supposed to be one person, one vote. It is not.
Yeah. Phil, we're coming down to the end of our segment, but you've got some leaders in the room with some guts, and I dare say some agree with you and some disagree with you, but this is a place where we have meaningful dialogues about the most important issues in the world. So with all the people in the room,
Well,
what's one thing that you would suggest that they do or think about over the next decade or so to confront capitalism and democracy?
I think that if you're running a company, make it a company that scores high on reputation. And there's a lot of things that go into that. And it is pursuing the triple bottom line. So as our companies get better and pay fairly to the working class and the middle class, and don't walk away with $475 million a year for a year of work, things will get better. And so everyone can do something about that. Great. In other words, if you're shareholders, you should be asking, what are we paying to the CEOs? And what are we getting for our money and so on.
Right.
Okay.
Phil, Kotler is an economist. You heard that today. Demand Brilliance. That sounds like a book as well. You just have to change the title and publish the same book.
A different cover.
A different cover.
Yeah, same.
Right. Capitalism Depends on the Credit Card. That is darn scary. Automation, Poverty, Carbon Footprint. Spin New Lifestyles. I like that.
Less is more. That's one of them.
Ageless Insights from a fortunately ageless human being. And Phil, if you quit, you'll make us all very unhappy.
All right, I won't quit.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sure.